Welcome to the Outer Realm with Michelle DeRoche and Amelia Pisano. Airing live on the United Public Radio Network, 105.3 FM in New Orleans.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Wednesday night segment of the Outer Realm. We are broadcasting live here on the United Public Radio Network, 105.3 FM from the beautiful city of New Orleans. We are fully sponsored by the amazing people over at Folgers Coffee who make all of this greatness happen each and every week. So thank you, Folgers. Would not be the same without you. Also, big thank you to Dr. Snick, aka Justin Snicker, the Sonic Surgeon, for his contribution of our intro and outro. He is an award-winning composer of Halloween, horror, sci-fi, and dark wave electronic music, and his music can be found anywhere that good music can be found, such as Bandcamp, Spotify, iTunes, Amazon, etc., etc. Tonight, we welcome Lindsey Scharmyn to the show for the very first time. She is an experiencer of other realms via astral travel, dreamwalking, visions, and interaction with other dimensional entities. That's just for starters, folks. Sure is. So in order to participate in this evening's show, like every night, you're going to have to go over to UFO Gods and Extraterrestrials on YouTube, UFO Paranormal Radio, Outer Realm on Facebook, of course, and let's not forget Canada's Most Haunted, moi. And news on the flip side, Joe Montella, UFO Undercover, and we got another one there, UFO Paranormal Radio. I think I said that one. So there's 8 different platforms for you guys to tune into and get into chat, etc. And where we go, I don't know what you're doing there. Joe, quit messing with the chat. Totally lost everybody else at the top. So hello, Jeannie. Hello, Lisa. Yes, you are going to be on the show next week, and we are looking forward to it. Hello, Wayne. So you'll notice I am solo tonight with none such little bubbly companion, and that is because she is still down for the count. Hopefully, she'll be in chat, and she will hopefully make it there and communicate through the chat room because she's still fighting a little bout of COVID, so we want to keep her away. So, oh, hello, Wayne Murphy. Thank you. So with that being said, our guest has arrived. Let's get the show on the road. Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
I am so good. Nice to meet you and see you, Michelle. Thanks for having me here today.
Oh, my pleasure. My God, I've heard nothing but good things, and I've just been really excited. I know.
That's always nice.
Yeah, I know. It's been really exciting because, of course, Michelle is a really good friend of me. And, she goes, oh, I just got this perfect person. I was like, oh, excellent. And she sent everything over. And I'm like, when am I booking? I just seemed like it was so far away. But I'm really glad that today arrived finally and that you're here joining us. I don't even know where to start. So you'll find this is pretty round table like. I'm not going to be like drilling you because I really want you to get as much out as you possibly can because there's a lot of people listening. So why don't we start with humble beginnings, because you've got all the stuff going on and I'm really curious to see how you got here.
Yeah, it's been a long and strange road.
I like it. Long and strange. That's the best kind of journey.
Yeah.
Excellent.
It's hard too because, I think people like to look at this in very black and white, and they're like, oh, you have a traumatic childhood, so everything was really bad all the time, and that was like the main defining aspect of your life, right?
Right.
But I also have this very magical, very spiritual, very incredible aspects to my childhood too. So the two things coincided, and I think that's actually pretty normal for a lot of people. I think a lot of people who have these strange paranormal, all kinds of phenomenon, I think a lot of them had trauma, which is a very interesting connection. But it is sort of different from what a lot of people think of when they think of childhood trauma. Like I said, that's like the only thing, that's the defining factor. And so And so, yeah, it's there's a lot to unpack there. And even as I grew and, became a teenager, and some of the trauma started to be dealt with, but also I went deep into some dark paths and dabbled in some, unsavory
Kindred
elements of
spirits,
society.
you and I, yes.
So
That sounds a little familiar.
yeah. So I went a little too far into the drugs and alcohol life,
Right.
Yes. But
Yes.
even during that, I have these amazing experiences that didn't ever stop.
Mhm.
They didn't ever slow down. In fact, it may have increased sometimes because of those things.
I was going to say, depending on, the type of things you're indulging in, some of that stuff can really take you on some interesting journeys.
Yes.
Like even science is getting in on some of that, saying, wow, here's what you can do with, I don't want to say what it is because I don't want to get a bunch of people out there trying, but there's some really interesting natural ways.
Very.
Things, right?
Yeah. Well, and now we're learning, in much smaller doses than I was ever doing. These things are very therapeutic, right?
That's true. Pretty sure we're on the same page with that. Yeah, okay.
But people also look at me and they're like, oh, so you came back, you're in recovery and you are no longer a drug abuser. And so, that time of your life must have been just awful. And how did you get through it? And it was dark, it was hard, but there was also it was dotted with these beautiful, amazing, I was never disconnected, actually. And I think that's actually one of the most beautiful and magical sides of having experienced that much darkness, is seeing that you're never lost. You're never disconnected. It's not great. I'm not encouraging people to go diving into the darkness.
No,
but I think we have this sort of idea that, excuse me, once you're there, you're sort of lost forever, or it's just so hard to redeem yourself or come back from that. And I don't think that's true.
No, I think it depends on the experience. I mean, I'm just looking over, your bio quickly. Well, basically it speaks that you've healed from severe childhood trauma, came back transformed, which I love the word transform, and transformative teaching and healing. And I'm definitely curious about that. Your show, Rogue Ways and Middle Path, sounds great. Offer spiritual services, healing, blessings, courses, orgone, crystal jewelry. Love that. Yeah. And so there's just a lot of like really interesting things. So when you're going through and finding, when you mentioned the darkness, a lot of people find like darkness can take many different paths. Like in your case, we indulged a little in this and that, and other people just delve into darkness in different ways of falling into, well, I'm just going to, beyond addiction and depression and things like that. It's just like a cult.
Yes.
Thinking a cult is a certain thing, and what they're doing is not a cult. It's just, I always say it's a bit of a dumbass thing. It's just, right. So,
and that's that sort of ego, self-indulgent, maybe even a little narcissistic or psychopathic.
See, all of the above. I choose D. All of the above. So for you, then you coming through this dark path, and I agree with you. I don't think I believe in darkness, that you find many different ways and pathways, and you realize you're not alone, and it doesn't matter which way you take.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. And it's, there's always that idea of karma, or what karma really means is the consequences of your actions, right? It's not a punishment. Yes. It's not like someone's sitting there like judging you, writing it out like, okay.
Don't let that out, because some people deserve that stuff. Don't tell there's no consequences. No. Right.
But it's cause and effect. So if you take a bunch of drugs, like, I mean, you could overdose, you could die, you could have a spiritual experience. All of those things could happen. So I'm not saying go do anything, don't think about the consequences, like you'll always be fine. I'm just saying you should never give up hope for yourself that you can come back from anything, or that you can be what we might call redeemed, right? It's always present. And I feel like that's part of why, on my soul journey, I did go so deep into the darkness, is to really see, first of all, the suffering that leads people there, right? Because
Right.
I had my trauma. I didn't even know I had post-traumatic stress syndrome. I just
Right.
did. It took me a long time, actually, to figure that out.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
That's a tough one when you don't know, because you don't really know how to fix it.
right. Well, and I just thought, like most people think, but post-traumatic stress disorder is for war zones. You have to go to
Right. It's true.
Vietnam, World War, whatever. You have to have bombs exploding, people dying. Like, that's post-traumatic stress.
That kind of, yes. Yes.
I didn't. I mean, I had
I'm not
instability.
stressed out or, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And we had some poverty. We didn't always have a home. We didn't always have food. And that was the core of it. And then I had this really awful experience when I was young where I was tortured by a dentist, actually.
Oh.
And I was young enough to not really.
Because we don't hate dentists enough. No offense to the dentists out there.
I know.
But,
But he was a predator, like he sought out. I was the youngest in my family. It was my first time ever going to the dentist. And my mom was practically a single mother. My father was just an alcoholic and off doing whatever he was doing. And so she was taking care of it all herself. We had no money, basically. And so he knew he had this like in the bag, and he didn't give me Novocaine and drilled and did all of this stuff.
See.
Very dark. And so, and I would tell them, this hurts so bad. This is what you guys have been telling me all these years. Like, this is why you hate the dentist. Like,
yeah, for real.
Yeah, I can't imagine why you're making me do this.
Wow.
And they just thought I was a baby or, just really weak or whatever. And it was years before I realized, because we were driving actually one day, and my brother and sister said something about, that really long needle at the dentist. And I was like, what needle? And they're like, the one that they numb you. They have to do it many times sometimes. I'm like, never had a needle. And they're like, yeah, you did. I'm like, never had a needle. And then even then I was like, I must be misremembering. I must be really weak. It must have just been. But then I found other people in my same community who are also the youngest female child of a single.
Because not that everybody screams for a needle this long, but holy crud,
Right.
Wow.
So I found other people who this same dentist had targeted, the exact same type of people.
Did you ever go after him, like as an adult?
He was dead by the time we figured
it out. Damn.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. No, and there would have been no way to prove it. Maybe.
Do you want to give him an attachment?
Yeah. Seriously. I'm sure he's getting his. I am sure he's got who knows what coming to him.
He probably had one to start with, right? Like
Probably.
To be. Wow.
Well, this
so
is
sorry you had to go through that. That's just wow. Oh.
So this is part of why I developed, they actually call it complex post-traumatic stress disorder.
No kidding.
More than just one trauma comes into
cluster. Yeah.
Yeah.
God, I can't imagine. I cannot imagine. Wow.
Very harsh. Well, if we want to get weird with it, this is actually connected to a past life memory that I had surface.
Weird is my middle name. Ask anybody.
So place here. And this is again years and years later. First of all, I finally was diagnosed. One of my doctors was like, I think you might have post-traumatic stress disorder, and here's some. And so I got some treatment for it finally, which was fantastic. I highly recommend anybody out there find treatment for your PTSD. You can actually overcome it, and it's beautiful to do so. So I specifically did Jungian psychotherapy and EMDR, which is an eye movement desensitization. Wow. I forget what the R stands for, but those are really good methods if anyone's looking out there. But so after that, even I began to have spontaneous past life memory recall prior to this, actually. But this specific past life came up after my PTSD treatment. And I think that's part of why it emerged, it was kind of like, okay, you're ready for this now. Like, here's the real truth. Here's what was going on this whole time. And I went back to, I was deep in meditative trance vision, however people want to think about that state. And I went back to spontaneously this time that seems to me like it was like middle-agey. I don't really know for sure, but that just felt like there'd be like knights riding by on horses or something. Nice. And I was instantly actually in this scene of severe torture. I won't go into details. I'll spare you that, but it was horrible. And if anyone out there's ever had past life recall, you live it. Like, it's
Having.
not,
It's
yeah,
true.
you're
It's true. I
experiencing
know
this.
you're right there with some of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I first thought I was there to just see this person being tortured for some reason, and then I realized I was torturing this person. Um,
Oh, so that was your karma.
this
The
was my
dentist
karma.
was your karma, is what you're
Exactly.
saying.
Exactly.
Wow.
So I came back from that. I first of all had to deal with the trauma of reliving torturing someone, and that was its own journey.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then I had to go and really see my little tiny child self being tortured by this dentist, and accept
This is your
that
association,
we had
right?
arranged this. Yeah, like this was my way to sort
Wow.
of balance the scales in some way. And it's not necessarily like an eye for an eye. I think it's more like your soul wants to see, why would I ever torture someone? Okay, well,
Hmm.
here's this life where you do. This is why
Right.
you would. And I remember feeling like very vindicated, very justified, very much like this is what has to happen to save the realm, or, the
Right.
cause, I whatever.
Right.
And
Yeah. But that was the times,
right.
right?
And
Right.
his was very different. I don't know. I don't really understand his motivations. They're very much more personal and sick feeling to me.
Hmm.
But the end result is the same. You
It
you
is.
chose to inflict this on
It is.
someone.
You got to feel what you inflicted. It's just,
Yeah.
yes. How much of that? I mean, I've had past life things and think to myself,
Why?
I don't think I like this too much. It's
Right.
so yeah, I
Well,
get
that's
it.
one of the things that blew my mind too, because I had never really
Mm,
I had heard of past lives and I'd heard of past life regression, but it always sounded
yes,
like really positive to me. Oh, you're a Cleopatra. You're like this princess,
sure.
this
Aren't we
queen,
all? Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so mine were like these dark every single one I've had is horrifying. I go back, I relive it. I come back to this life and I'm like, oh my God, I'm reeling.
Well, you have to ask yourself, what did you to peeve off the universe to that degree that every life you have
Right.
has just been so like traumatic? Do you find that you're out of it now? Like you've lived your dark moments and now you're
I think so. I think all of those that I was remembering that carried that darkness were definitely connected to illnesses or physical maladies or
right.
mental constructs and sort of traumas that I had to deal and get through in this life. So I
Mm,
got to see their origin point every time, which was
right,
never
right.
great. But I was so lucky because after a while I had that. I was like, why? Why are this life so hard? It's been so hard. All those lives are so hard. Is this all life is? It's just a series of horrifying things. And
Yes, this is like total job jail sort of thing. Like you come here to learn. It's just horrific. But some people think, oh, this is great. Love and light. What?
yeah, there's a lot of that.
I
Well,
know.
but I
Yeah.
found, I like to say I found the joy and all and harmony in all that exists. And I actually have this deep reverence for life now. I have this joy. And I'm so lucky because I have this friend she's so gifted, and she shared with me, she was doing like a psychic trance, reading with me. And she said, well, she didn't say, the guide that she was channeling said, you don't have to imagine that every one of your lives and this life have only been darkness. They're saying you've chosen to deal with like the rest of your karma in this life. And so you've front loaded it basically, but
Right.
you have countless lives where you had joy and peace, and those weren't what you're
Show me
dealing with.
one.
Yeah, just prove it.
They say, I want to know one. Yeah, right.
Yeah. Well, and then she shared a couple with me, and I feel this great connection with those too. And I've now had some memories that are more positive. So I've heard from other people that they had a similar path with their past life memory, that it starts with like the worst, the negative, the stuff that you're dealing with in this life to karmically balance or release or heal. And
Right.
then you get to kind of go towards the positive, which if you think about physical healing, it's very similar too, right?
Yes.
It hurts, it's horrible, you hate it, like, oh, I wish I didn't have to do this. And then when you come out the other side, you're sometimes even like, oh, I'm even better than I was before, actually. Like everything's
Yeah.
quite nice.
It's like, oh, that was okay, I guess, right? Chris is saying past life regression is part of shadow work. Would that be correct?
That's my understanding, right? And until you kind of like, if this is even possible for people, have
Right.
none left.
Right.
If you've really integrated your shadow fully, then yeah, I think you finally get to have like the good stuff come up.
Right. I always say, I think I've done my shadow work a long, long time ago. Memories just come to me naturally. And I've always been told that I have a knack of walking both sides very easily. Like, I'm completely okay with all this. And there are days like, oh, bullshit, no way. It's just, so I don't know. I think there's something to be said for that. I mean, do we ever really work through that? Because whenever life throws you a curveball, you sit there and you think, have I really dealt with it? Just because of the way you react and you behave.
Yeah, I definitely still sometimes somebody will do something or say something and I'm like, and then I'm like, oh,
I know.
Yeah. The rest of the time I'm like healing people and I'm meditating and then I will have my little breakdown moments. But this is what I also appreciate, because all of the teachers I've been drawn to, most of them I've been forced against my will by the universe into their lap. But the other ones that I get to choose,
it doesn't really count.
Yeah.
Right.
They are often the same, they're very down to earth and real about like, yeah, I'm a human being still, like we can reach high and have our roots grow deep and still be very honest about where we're at here. We're not,
we're still human, even though we're that being of light having a human experience. Unfortunately, we're kind of stuck in the car and we have to experience all of this physical baggage.
Yes.
Right. And it's hard to separate from that sometimes.
Absolutely. And I think that's part of what's so beautiful about it too, though, because I have more and more of these experiences where we'll call it our higher consciousness, right? It'll like come to me right in the moment. It'll be like, oh, you're about to do that thing, when you get nasty or you get like you react or you get triggered, like you're about to do it. And I'm like, oh, and then I get to like, oh, I'm not going to do it. And then see how that goes. It's very different.
It depends on the situation. Yes, I am.
Yeah. Or sometimes I'm like, I don't care.
Get out of here, myself.
Right.
Nobody invited you to this party right now. So yeah, that would be very difficult. Now, do you find because of that? I mean, if we talk about attachments a little bit, because I've worked with like hundreds of people with attachments. Do you find that it's sort of like the egg and the hen, which came first, right? Because the behavior can attract things to feed from that energy, or these entities can amplify pre-existing conditions that's already there. Yeah. So in your case, what do you think came first? Because it can transcend through lives, right?
I've worked with people too that it came from past lives. It was been there for who knows how many lives sometimes. And people sometimes who say that they want their entity attachment gone, but they don't actually want it gone. And I'm like, I can't do this for you. Like, this is, I'm here to help, to guide you, to really, I love that, it's a quote or a saying that's like any true healer knows that I'm not the one healing you. I'm assisting you in healing yourself.
That's right.
It's your guides, your allies, your soul, you're healing you. Yeah. But I do see that for the most part, there's definitely those circumstances where this came from somewhere. It was either like a curse or scent, or it came to attach, right? Even in those
like
situations.
A lineage thing? You think a generational curse for yourself?
For me, yes, that definitely is a part of it, and more. But there's also for some people, right, there's the what I'm really trying to say is if this thing has nothing to hold on to, then it can't hold on. So it's just like if you have a pile of rotting food somewhere, the maggots are going to arrive.
That's
right? If you clean up the rotting
food,
analogy. The flies can lay their eggs anywhere and they don't hatch and they don't produce and it fails, right? So if you're keeping your spiritual, your mental, your emotional, your physical clean, no parasites, no sort of entities or attachments can come to you. That's a simplified way of thinking about it, but it's also true. You really, so the environment, the terrain is going to matter whether or not these things can happen, and you can invite and that you can do it on accident and all these things, right? True. But I do one of my powerful entity attachments was invited accidentally,
right?
And there's also the possibility that the ancestral piece had like a strengthening effect to that, right? Like the portal was bigger.
No, absolutely. People don't realize how easy it really is. And I tend to think, you're correct when you say like people have to want to let it go. I always compare it to living as a hostage. Sometimes you have hostages who become so dependent and attached to the kidnapper, you know, and you try to separate that and they start to feel vulnerable that it's not there anymore. It's really difficult to work with mindset that way with people. They don't understand, because I was in the same situation. That's why we started talking kindred spirits. Yeah, I've been down that road. It's
Yes.
like, you know, and you know, this was long before, of course, you know, internet. So I'm aging myself a little bit here, but I had to get rid of my own attachment. Not like I could call somebody and say, hey, you know, you didn't even talk about stuff like that back then. You just figure out a way to change your mindset, put yourself in control, and be the one in charge.
Yes. It's
And
actually very empowering.
it is. It actually is. But you just have to believe it. You know, when you start faltering, you have to realize there's always something else ready to come in. You know, you're ready to trip. We're going to get up. No, put the foot on your back. No, I can't get up. It's always,
it goes both ways, right? There's always something willing, right? If you're calling on us, you know, allies and guides of whatever you want to call it, of the love, of the light, of the truth, they're ready too. They're always ready to come in. And I, you know, I think people like you and I, that's why maybe we gave ourselves these experiences in this life, is to have to basically perform exorcisms on ourselves, right? Like to detach, to kick these things out, to really claim our space, to understand that this is what's really happening. It's a spiritual world. We're having a physical experience, but this is a spiritual world by nature. And to develop all of that without much guidance or help, and to do it all ourselves, like how much more powerful than our you could call it faith if you want, our conviction, our empowerment, when we go to then serve other people and help with them. We've already done it all.
That's it, right?
For sure.
I always say practice what I preach.
Yeah.
So when you're moving on and helping other people, it's like, no, I've been there.
Yes.
I wouldn't ask something of you that I didn't do myself.
Yes.
Right. So, and I think that's a really big part of it. There's just a lot of people out there like, oh, I can help you with this. Have you ever been through it? Because it's like being an addict sometimes for some people, coming off of a really bad addiction and having withdrawals. And some people really are like that. I've seen some crazy situations. I'm just like, you know, I don't realize how much happier you'll actually be without this.
Right.
They don't realize. You have a question. Here we go. Can you give a description of shadow work, as some do not understand?
My take on shadow work is looking in the mirror, right? And there's nothing else to it. Again, I'm simplifying, but that's really what it is. And you look at yourself, and there's some people who are going to hear this and they're going to take it too far. And I know that type, because that's me. You're like, okay, well, in what ways am I a piece of crap? Like, I look at all these things and I suck so bad, right? Like, you don't want to do that either. You want to be honest about it, but you want to look and see, like, where am I falling short? Where am I failing? Basically, where am I lying to myself? And where am I, not being true, not being honest. This is, I think, and I say this to people with all seriousness, this is like the core of the work. Whatever faith you're in, whatever religion, whatever path you're traveling, whatever atheist, it doesn't even matter. Like, this is the core of what we're actually doing here, is looking to see what is actually in there. Who am I actually? What have I been carrying around? What have I been doing? Why have I been doing it? What are my true motivations?
And that's really different here. I'm just trying to get this to scroll. What are you doing? Just trying to do what I always do. Confused. There we go. There we are.
I know. Sometimes,
yes, I agree
sometimes it like hops back up, and you're like, "Wait, I was somewhere. I was there."
It's been that kind of a day. That's all I'm saying. No, I do agree with you. And Chris also goes on to say, going back to attachments, how some have a codependent relationship with attachments. Yes, and I agree with that as well. I agree with that as well. So, of course, I always say, because of my own attachments, I've come to learn, because I've had for memories of many extraterrestrial experiences.
Yeah.
And they tend to be quite linked together. So did you find the same for yourself?
I did.
That's too weird. It's like talking to myself.
That's very, very interesting. It's interesting for me because I had more of the, I'll say like abduction type phenomenon during the periods of time where I had this more powerful attachments. Those are part of what seemed to be connected to the ancestral piece of it as well. And then I have a lot more, not so much the physical abduction type experiences, but the astral travel. What some people have this word for, or this phrase for it, that's like the midnight school or something, where I'm being like trained astrally by these beings that other people would definitely call extraterrestrial. But I have no reason to believe they're anything but spirit in form. I don't know that they have a body. I've never seen them
dimensional, I think.
Right.
Yes.
And I don't, and those two things seem to be different. They seem to be disconnected. So if they are connected in some way, I've never been shown their connection. They didn't happen at the same time. And so as you know, they're positive beings that are helping in some way and training in some way and showing, like, you know, here's what's actually going on in your dimension right now. And that type of stuff. And then is there something else that's darker that's taking us, experimenting on us, implanting things? I seem to have had 2 implants that I seem to
Some believe that's government.
I think so, because this is what's really interesting is someone was saying, you know, my father was in Vietnam. This is why he was so screwed up. He got forced there against his will. He was forced to stay an extra tour. He was in Cambodia, not Vietnam. He knew that. He was experimented on, just like all of them are. And so he had a horrible time coming back. I remember him. I will never forget him watching Jacob's Ladder and saying, this is a documentary. And knowing now, I didn't understand. I was a child then, but now I look and I'm like, oh my God. So
it is,
the level of trauma, you know, but people point out, people have these contracts they create, again, whether it's familial farther back than just him or not. This contract maybe was reinforced, but that they create in the military with these dark entities that give them permission and access to their children. Who knows how many generations of them? So do those contracts, and that's on a spiritual level as well. But I didn't know that. I was a kid, so I think this happened to my sister. I think it happened to me, maybe my brother too, and some really dark stuff. And you know, we would wake up with physical seeming aberrations on our skin. My brother had burns and a finger marks around his arms once, and very strange things. And those implants, you know, more than being just electronic or whatever else. I had this really fascinating guest once, and maybe you've had him too, Nathan. I'm not going to remember his last name. Nathaniel Gillis.
Yeah, awesome. He's been on a few times. Yeah, we love him.
About that iron and writing the demon's name on it and then implanting that. And I'm like, I feel like that's what those implants are about more than anything else.
That could be, you know. Well, they'll say, you know, with government that they would chip you, whereas extraterrestrials, ET or interterrestrials, like they don't have to actually do that. They can just follow your bloodline, your ancestral lines, like. They just don't, you know, they have long lifespans. They don't need to chip you. They know where you're going. They know how to keep track of their contactees. But I think abductees tend to fall more under government, whereas contactees are more having these better experiences.
Yeah.
I mean, Preston Dennett. Have you ever had Preston Dennett on your show? If you haven't, you have to. I'll connect you, honestly. Because what he talks about is all positive extraterrestrial experiences. Like he's got scads and scads of them. I'm just like, God, you know, you hear about all the really horrific ones.
Right.
But I'll send you his contact info.
I would love that. Yeah, I am lucky enough to have these, you know, one of my
Dolly, his besties right here in chat, Dolly. Thanks, Dolly. There you go. Yeah, send me his email, Dolly.
Yes.
We don't have to connect through Facebook, please. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm lucky enough to have some positive interactions, and I actually, throughout most of my life, have had these. I call them wogies at this point. I have sort of a Native American and shamanic aspect to my own tradition, and there's a Native American tradition that calls these star beings wogies, and so I call them wogies. You're laughing because you're the same. Of course. Not surprised.
That's all I'm saying. But okay.
So they will come to me. I mean, literally anytime I'm outside at night at this point. But when I was young, it'd be, a little less frequent because it was a little
Right.
bit overwhelming because I had no idea what was going
I
on.
can see that. Yeah, I can see
Right.
that.
And they interact telepathically, and they can be and do anything anywhere. They can fly as fast, turn, whatever. There's no, they again seem to be not physical, is my point. And
Mhm.
one of my experiences that was very positive with them was, going out of body, going up into what seems to be a ship to me, but I really feel like that's a construct to help you understand what you're doing. Like, especially back then before I had more nuance to my thought. And we traveled out. Again, it couldn't have been a real ship. Well, if it does, we don't understand anything because we went
Right.
from the Milky Way to out to the whole
Right.
universe. And they showed me the whole universe. And
Right.
it looked like a giant, super amazingly bright center that got a little less bright as it came out in like a figure 8.
Mhm.
And they showed me the Milky Way is actually way out here on the edge of one of the eight.
Point over there. Right.
Way
Right.
out towards the edge there. And
Right.
that's where you live. And I was like, this is everything. Like, it was the most amazing magical experience. And I'm going to date myself a little too, because this was also before the internet. This was also before I really had seen many pictures of what the universe supposedly, even the stars or clusters or nebula really looked like. But synchronistically, of course, completely by accident, I'm sure, I happened to go to the library. I've always been a library nut. And I happened to pick up a nova, which was something about the universe. And in that episode, there was all these images I had never seen before, but looked exactly like what they had showed me. Not that whole universe. We haven't gotten that far yet, but
Right.
the sparklies and the bits and the clusters and the brightness and all the colors exactly the same. I was like,
Right.
how did I know that? And
Right.
then I realized, I don't think I did. I think that really happened. It was a really vivid dream to me because, again, I have no reference for this. No one's teaching me or guiding me. I'm very young, so I just didn't know. But that Nova episode really cinched it for me. I was like, I think I really actually went with these beings. And tons of experiences since then, of course, have really nailed that home. But
Our little psychedelic friends.
yes. Right? And
I know. Yeah, I get it.
I want to do that. How do I do that? I'm like, I genuinely don't know. Open your heart.
Ayahuasca? I don't know. Might be a good way to start.
Be careful what you invite, actually. But, maybe
No,
that's
it's true. I agree. I agree with you. I mean, I think if you can find a way of working with, a shaman, somebody who is versed, really versed in helping you make those connections and knows what's coming in, because I've seen some really seasoned, gifted individuals really get themselves into a lot of trouble
me too.
by
Yes.
not being aware.
Of
These beings, didn't get to be around as long as they have by not knowing what they're doing.
very, very crafty.
Exactly. Anything that can, change its voice or its appearance or anything of that sort. You would have to be so on your game to be able to tell the difference. And that's really hard to do.
Yeah. Well, and I think there's people who have this ego about it and they're like, yeah, I don't do anything. It's great. Right. And those are the people who are much more likely to fall into that. And then there's this, the way I work with my own shamanic tradition is I don't do anything, actually. I don't.
Right. That's how to work with it. I don't.
My allies who I trust, they're doing it, right? So people say, like, I want you to do blank for me. And I say, well, we will go into ceremonial space and we will see what your guides and my guides pull off together. And genuinely, my job is to just watch. I'm not directing. I'm not telling anyone what to do. I'm not going to choose to go into a past life for you because I don't know which, when, where, why. Why would I be going to that one? Like,
that's why you have guides, right? That's why you have people in the ether who are willing to do all that work
and who know better than me what's actually happening. So
you're there to make the introduction between guides
and to bring that back, the information back. Here's what they showed me. Here's what they say. Here's what or here's even who your guides are, because most people don't necessarily know, right?
That's true. Yeah.
And so that makes it, I won't say easy. It's still very, it takes a lot on my part to do all that.
Yes.
It's hard. It still takes a lot of discernment. I think that's most of my decades of experiencing and learning with other shamans. Again, against my will, I never chose to do it actually.
Right.
And all of these things was to really heighten that discernment. So I had to see all the different ways that these tricks take place, all the different
Right.
types of entities, all the different pitfalls along the way, to learn finally in the end that level of humility that says, I don't know actually, right? I have a very good level of discernment now to know which guides I'm going to work with and how to set
Right.
up my protection. And that is in itself a very powerful thing to have developed. But when I'm actually in that space, I'm not doing anything.
Right.
Just
Right.
there to help and observe.
That's a big one too, you know. Dolly says, yeah, see Dolly and Preston right there in the picture. Guiding the one on discovery is to help them see for themselves. 100%.
Absolutely.
100%.
And my goal as a teacher, I mean, when I was working in public schools, private schools with middle school students, high school students, little kids, adults in college, all of those is exactly the same as my goal as a spiritual teacher, which is I want you to do this on your own. I want you to do it better than me. I want you to be free and liberated. I don't want us to be connected forever. No offense.
Right.
I love you.
Right.
But I want you to go and do anything you want. And so I want you to have the tools.
It's like being a parent and a child,
Yes.
preparing them and putting them out into the world and grow and evolve.
Yes. And that's my goal. I want you to do it.
Right. Yeah.
But I'll be here as long as you need me.
That's why if you don't get it right, it's not my fault. So that is all on you.
I'm very careful which tools I give to people. And like you said, you know, I'm not going to be the reason someone invited something dark or fell into
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
I think that falls even, you know, with readers, people who do readings, and I commend people for doing it because I always said, you know, it's something that I could do. But I made the mistake at a very young age. Like at 18, your best friend goes, "Oh, I don't know, my boyfriend's cheating on me." And you have no tact, and you go, "Yeah." You know, I'm like, "Oh," and I realized after, like, I think that was such a good thing to say, because you don't think about it. You know, you just blurt out. You think you're doing your bestie a favor, and you know, like, I'm going to do you a solid and just tell you straight up what you want to know. But she tried to take her own life over it, and I realized at that point, I'm like, this is a responsibility that I just don't want.
Yeah.
And maybe it's a bit selfish on my part, but
No.
then be it because I don't want to be responsible for something like that. Every time you come to a fork in the road and make a decision, that path changes, that reading changes. And I commend people who take the faith to do it and that leap of faith and say, no, I trusted myself to do this and guide people. But people really do hang. Some people, I won't categorize everyone. Some people really do hang on everything that medium or that reading is showing or saying. And that's really difficult. I just, chose at 18 when I did that. I was like, I'm just going to take that step back. Thank you.
I think that's so intelligent, though, and it's so honorable of you to do that because it is so much responsibility. You know, every time I do a reading, every time I do a healing, that is my primary. Well, I shouldn't say primary. My primary concern is the safety of all of us spiritually. But you know, beyond that, it's which messages am I relaying, and how am I doing it, and how am I presenting it? And I even have this. Here, I'm going to give away a secret, everyone. I have receive a lot, and I don't always share all of it. And I actually ask 100% of the time, again, their guides, my guides, is this information going to serve their highest flourishing of their soul? Or however you want to describe that, right? Whatever words you would use in your own practice, but does it serve that? Or is this extraneous information? Or is it information that's going to do more harm than good? Because I'm not going to share everything, actually. Believe it or not, as much as I give people as much as I share, I don't share everything sometimes. And
See, I'm the opposite. I want to know everything. But then again, I'm very comfortable in all of it. I don't fear death. I don't fear anything. I'm just sort of like, whatever. It's the next leg of life.
Yeah.
Next part of the journey, if it's there, so be it. Tell me, I want to know, dang it, because
know.
I want to live my best life within that remaining time. But not everybody can handle things like that either.
No. Well, and I definitely, part of many readings I've done, I know have supported or pushed forward the ending of relationships, marriages,
That's
the
hard.
quitting of jobs and careers, and I take it very seriously. And but I also, again, I asked first, is this actually going to serve their heart? Do they need this, right? And I also understand this truth, which is that I am not the reason actually that those people broke up. I'm not the reason that they left there. The cards aren't even the reason. The reading I give, the healing that I do, the visions I bring back, those aren't even the reason why. The reason why is that person already knew it. They already felt it in their heart, and they finally got the confirmation, the affirmation, the permission to do what they knew they had to do, which I've experienced, you've experienced, I'm sure too, right? And sometimes in the harshest ways where you're like, no, universe, I'm not doing that. That's crazy.
Yeah.
But then you realize, you're like, yeah, actually, I have to do that. Like it was 3 years ago I was still a teacher. And I had been for 14 years. This is my career. This is my passion. This is my sacred duty, I take it as, and achieved, high honors and certificates and all of this stuff. And I had a boyfriend who I really believed was going to be my husband. We're going to be together forever. I bought this house that I manifested. That's its own cool story. And it's a beautiful house, the house I always wanted, always dreamed of. I lived there. I have my car. It's so nice. And then the universe started basically telling me like, yeah, you're going to quit all this. You're never going to teach again. You're going to sell your house. You're going to sell your car. You're going to leave this guy and you're going to get in a van and drive around the country. And I'm like, that's insane. I'm not doing that.
What is wrong with you, universe? You are short-circuiting.
Yes, like this is not right.
Wow.
Yeah, all of that. I was making more money than I'd ever made before.
Wow.
Everything. And I was like, I just don't know. Am I doing that thing where you like are sabotaging yourself because you want to get away from it all or something, or am I like delusional or is some dark entity
manifesting a whole other reality for yourself?
Right, or that, but that was like the littlest one. Like, this is not probably right. There's probably a dark entity that got back in somehow, and it's like trying to destroy
it's hard.
my
You
life.
question everything.
Yes.
So, darn it, where did I got a crack in the shield? What's going on?
Yes. Right. So I was like really pop. And so I went one day and I said, okay, universe, God, guides, love, everything, please, real talk, right? Like help me understand. And I go, for me, I have to go to the woods, to the water, to a river, to a waterfall, and I have to just really let go of everything, get deep. And so I went to this
best place.
Yes. So I went to this hike. It's a popular hike, and somehow no one's there. I went to this hike, go deep into the woods all by myself. There's this beautiful waterfall. It's so cool. Hike down, sit by it, and I ask them, am I in the right spot? And they say very clearly, no, actually, like climb over that rock over there. I'm like, are you guys messing with me? Like, so okay, I'm gonna do it. I climb over this rock. I sit down. I'm like, is this the right spot? They're like, actually, like go across there and jump over this little whatever and then sit there. I'm like, okay. Like, yeah, I really think whatever, I'll do it. I've learned long ago. I trust this feeling, this knowledge, this guide, So I go over, I sit, I look down, and I'm like, okay, what's here? And I get quiet, and I look to my left, and there's just this knife. It's this buck knife or whatever. It's folds. But it's open for some reason. Could have been folded back in. It's not. It's in a very specific angle, and it's a very specific knife. And my mind like breaks and shatters because maybe 1 year, 1.5 years, something before, I had been with that same boyfriend. We had been so heavily drinking still. I had quit all the other drugs and I had made all this progress, but I was still a very heavy drinker. And I was the most hungover I think I've ever been in my life. And I was like driving, which was actually crazy because it was that type of hungover where like, I should not have been driving.
Right. You kind of still on the fringe. Yeah.
Yikes. Yeah. But I was like, I need to stop and get out of the car. I think I'm going to puke actually. And there's this lake. Let's stop here. I'm like, for some reason, I just have to go all the way out to this point, even though I'm so tired and so hungover, I can barely move. There's something's calling me to this like point that juts out into this lake. So I walk all the way out there and there is a knife and it's open instead of closed and it's in this very specific angle and it's the exact same knife. And at the time I thought to myself, and I knew this is saying something to me about how I have to like cut out some crap. Like I am
Yes.
pulling some crap. I'm
Yeah.
sickening myself. Something's not right. Many things aren't right still.
Cut some
And I need to like
ties.
cut it off. And I
Right.
took that knife and I kept it. So a year and a half later, I go into this waterfall thing and I go sit down in the, I mean, this is not even on the path. This is like hiked off the path up into the like the woods. And here's this knife sitting there again. And I'm like, what? And I asked,
Did you do though when you saw it the first time? Did you cut all that out of your life?
no.
Oh, so the knife is
Because
reminding you, like, this is
this is
promises you made and you didn't
and you
hold
didn't
to
cut
it.
because I wasn't brave enough. Because what I knew at that point was I don't want to teach anymore. And this isn't actually the love of my life. And I love
Mm.
my house, but I only have my house because I teach, and I can't keep my house if I'm not teaching, and I don't, so I can't leave teaching. So it's this like
Right.
circular logic, right? That's like, no, I
Right.
have to keep all these things because they feed each other and
You're,
they're
you're
what I
handcuffed to
want.
the full circle.
Right.
Dolly
So I
said your
have,
spiritual development must always be in progress, even when in service to others.
especially then, yes.
Yes.
It's never
Yes.
stops, never stops. I love that my very good teacher who came in the form of my Jungian psychotherapist said, don't ever think that you've arrived. You've never arrived. Keep going. It's like, that's the best advice
It
ever.
is. It is
Uh,
because the idea is to keep evolving and awakening and being the best that you can and just, getting to a higher density all together. You can't stop.
well, and
You want to
I
get so good that you be up there with the Council of Nine.
absolutely. That's the eventuality. So I saw this knife. I understood what it meant, but I still was in
Right.
denial for a little bit. I did some more searching, and there was just endless synchronicities that reinforced it and messages that reinforced it. And I finally said, okay, I put in my notice at work that I wasn't coming back the next year or ever. I told my
Ever at all, right?
yeah, forever. I told my boyfriend, I'm gonna sell this house. You can come with me if you want. I don't know where I'm gonna go. I'm gonna get in a
But
van. I'm
apparently,
gonna
I'm
drive
not going
around.
to like you very much either in the next 6 months. So.
And he's like, no, I'm not doing that. You're crazy. But he loved me, and we loved each other through it. But we broke up. I sold the
Right.
house. I sold the car. I quit the job. I got in a van. I drove around the country, and I ended up where I am now. With the absolute love of my life, soulmate, I couldn't have even imagined. Couldn't have even imagined. Happier
that
than I've ever
universe,
been.
though.
They
Right?
know what they're talking about. Yeah.
They do.
But
They
how
do.
much trust to leave all of that? Just cut
That's
it out.
big.
Big.
You're
And
leaving your security blanket, really, that comfort zone.
all
You're
of it.
stepping outside of that completely and you're just throwing caution to the wind and you're taking this big chance that it's going to work out in your favor.
And it did. And I'm not saying to anyone just on a whim, drop everything, cut your
Let
life
go,
apart and run.
Right,
No,
right.
I'm saying I had very clear, very direct guidance to do this. And because I trusted it, I
Mhm.
got to live a higher version of this life, right? I could have chosen another path and it could have gone a different way. And it did. I'm so grateful that I listened and that I trusted. And my spiritual skills opened even more. I had even more, whatever we want to call it, psychicness, shamanic experience, all of that, which is also happens for all of us when we do shadow work, when we do those things where, again, I looked in the mirror and I was like, actually, I've been lying to myself about all of this. I love teaching, but this is actually no longer my life path. I love this man, but he is not my soulmate. I love this house, but it's a house. Who cares? Like all these things. And to add sort of insults to injury, as I was, selling all my stuff and most of it, keeping what matters, and we're just really downsizing, getting this van ready to go traveling around. I mean, this is it's not like one of those Sprinter vans. It's like a Mercedes. So this is like a little van I bought and just stuck a bed in. But
Right.
but it's beautiful.
I love that, though. I love it. It's so bohemian-like.
Yeah, it's very, very boho.
I love it.
So I feel like people would see this van and be like, "Oh yeah, the '60s are back!" Like,
Loving life. No, I love that. I love that.
But on top of all of that, it was almost like the universe was like, "Okay, yeah, good. You're doing a good job releasing these things that are just material and not really, they're not of the spirit. They're not of your progression, and you're doing a great job at that. So we're gonna delete every single picture you've ever taken from your computer, every single essay you've ever written, every poem you've ever written, all your books that you wrote, and everything else that matters from you, just like that. And no one's going to be able to recover it." And that happened to me right before I got in the van to leave. And I cried for days. I don't know if people can imagine like every picture
It's
you've
a
ever taken,
memory. Pictures are memories.
all gone, all gone.
So why
So
do you think you go to that extent? I mean, I've purged. People laugh because at one time I used to have over like 100 mirrors, and I have like an exotic like chair fetish, and I mean lots of freaking chairs. Like I love just carved, but for me, I've realized it because it reminded me of a past life, a time where I obviously it was very important to me, and I feel comfortable within the space of all of this. And
yeah,
people laugh at me because I'm just gothic arches. Like I'm ridiculous. I see them, I'm just like, oh, it's just like completely ridiculous. So I say I got rid of stuff, but somewhere along the line, I'm kind of like, oh look, I have room for another chair.
not that one, yeah.
I'm not getting the whole freaking lesson here. So so which is what point I was getting at. How do you get to that point? I mean, where your memories are being taken away. I've always said the best gift you could ever give anyone is a gift of a memory. Being in Scotland and Europe with my son, he hated having his picture taken. I just finally looked at him and said, "You will have a picture taken. I'm going to prove you were here with me." And that was the end of it. I couldn't imagine if those were all gone.
Yeah,
Like,
they're gone. I luckily a few of them were on Facebook. Like I've retained a
right.
few, some of the things, and that's nice. And I've been able to recover my books, thank God, and a few other writings from the Wayback Machine. I actually because my site also was lost, which is a whole different story.
Wow.
But the Wayback Machine is cool because I got to go back and find at least some of the articles and things that I had written, and I got them all. But I really struggled with it for a little while. Like I said, I cried literally, I think, for a week. I was very
Then
depressed.
You got mad? Did you get mad?
I got mad. I was angry. I was all of this, but
Thank you, Adriana.
I came to this. I came to this. It was very like Buddhist, Taoist. This sort of like, what's a possession anyway? What was this actually really worth anyway, right? Like, what's even the house? What's the house actually worth anyway? In the end, you don't take it with you. I know it's like this trite sort of thing we say over and over again, but really, it's true. What do you take with you, right? That's in your soul. That's immaterial. It's of your emotional body. It's of your mental body. You don't take anything else with you. So while it hurt, learning to release that attachment was actually really powerful. And I think it was part of the preparation. When I got in that van, I was like, I don't have anything left here anyway. I'm really like, I'm free to go and do anything. And I drove around the continent, all of Canada, up to Alaska, and I had the most beautiful time of my life, and then met my soulmate, and now have this amazing life where I get to do all the things I was always doing spiritually. I was always doing tarot readings. I was always accidentally doing healings on people. I was always guiding
accidentally. I like that. Sure.
I was always guiding people spiritually and all this stuff. And now I get to do it all the time for anybody who needs it. And that is the most fulfilling, more fulfilling than teaching. I didn't know there could be something more fulfilling
You're
than
just
that.
teaching in a different way, I think.
That's true.
Right?
That's true.
Wayne says, I think it was to remove all your attachments, wiping the slate clean so there would be more room for you to find your true path.
Exactly.
To which, I absolutely agree with that. When people don't realize that we attach, but we can also attach to people. This was something that son said to me. He goes, I'm just your attachment. I'm just like, what? Like, you are my child. Dang it, I made you. And he goes, no, I'm your attachment. And I couldn't get my head around that. So one day he became a parent, and I'm in the hospital room looking at this new little baby going, look, Eric, I have a new little attachment. That did not fly very well. Let me tell you, it was just, I call my child an attachment. Huh? Right?
I got it from you.
It's true, right? But in all reality, he wasn't wrong. We do attach to things, to people, to places. I think I attach to every place I've ever visited throughout the world. It's just you leave that little piece of yourself behind, and it's really difficult. I couldn't imagine losing all those memories, because I think that your memories and your experiences are what mold you into being the person that you are like today.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes I'm like, oh yeah, I went to that place once. I forgot because I don't have pictures anymore.
Wow. See that? So you're experiencing maybe all over again in a different way as this enlightened individual. Like,
it's very, and I've read a lot since then. And I know I had heard about it before, but I'd never really thought what it would be like. And so I didn't really attach to it, speaking of attachments. Right. And so, but I read again, after this all happened, like, one part of most shamans' path is radically separating from 100% of material reality, including leaving their home, leaving their family, leaving their friends, leaving every single item they have and going out to see what they find. And I'm like, oh, I accidentally did that. Like, along with every other shamanic initiation I have ever had, I accidentally did that one too.
Yeah, that would be so tough. It would. I like to think I am fairly enlightened, but there's just things that give me comfort.
I understand.
And, aside from the set, but I mean, the whole house is like this. So it is really, really difficult. I walk into a space, I'm like, I don't know where I picked this up. It's an energy thing for me. It's just, It takes me back. And that's obviously something that was very near and dear. And I have a lot of lineage that comes out of, like going back 1,000 years. Like I know my lineage going back 2,000 plus years. It's really hard because it becomes a part of you.
Yeah.
So to leave it all and just like go live in the woods and, or do something that's kind of like, wow.
Well, think about what we were talking about with the dark attachments, with the healing ourselves from that, with all of the PTSD healing I did. These are all preparing me, right, for what I can actually do and what I actually am and what this place actually is and what we are actually doing here. And this was just one more step of that was even more real, integrated. Like you're living it actually now, that there is nothing but you here, Even my little van, I tried to have like a few things where I'm like, okay, this is my little reminder of whatever. And here's my little emblem or my little altar. Like, but it's very different. And,
it comes down to stickers, bumper stickers. Yeah.
Well, and even that.
Here.
Yes, I do. I have all these stickers now. And I'm like, this is my new bulletin board. But it is, you really get to then be radically free and then discover like, who are you actually? What are you
and
doing here?
now you're essentially living your dream, is what you're saying.
Absolutely.
So everything led to this moment.
Everything.
And you're still evolving because now, did you find when you let go of all that baggage that you evolved on to a different level altogether?
Yes. In fact, what I really, really learned for me personally was that whole life I had constructed was based on, the Tower card in tarot? The concept is like the foundation. Is it good or is it bad? Like when this wiggling, it could be fine. Could be just all this chaos happens, but your tower's still standing. What's your foundation built on, right? My foundation, my tower crumbled because my foundation was built on guilt. I became a teacher out of guilt.
Really?
Yeah.
You loved it.
I was a fantastic teacher, very intelligent, super caring, compassionate. My whole motivation was because I love genuinely the hearts and souls of children, and I want them to develop
Derek
fully.
Says your tower of power. Hey, Derek.
So what did I have left when my tower crumbled? Well, I still had that heart of compassion. I still had that desire to do nothing but help people. I still had that powerful connection to source, divinity, or whatever you want to call it, and that ability to interact with, communicate with these other entities and beings. But I had this horrible guilt coming all the way from childhood, actually previous lives, that I had to get rid of, because you cannot build your tower on guilt. Your motivation has to be not just out of compassion and love, but built on something better and more solid and whole than guilt. So this level of shadow work took almost destroying my whole life to really see that what kept me there was guilt. If I leave, who's going to save these children from this system that's actually very disgusting? If I leave, who's going to love them? If I leave, who's going to tell them how beautiful and wonderful they are, how capable they are? Who's going to hold them to the standard? Who's going to do that? No one, because I look around me and none of these teachers are doing it. So they're going to be alone. And I finally had to realize that's not a good enough reason. You don't sacrifice yourself for other people, actually. If you're going to ever pretend that you're going to teach someone or heal someone, you're going to do it from a place of wholeness or nothing. So I had to really let that go and heal that. And that also involved me then claiming my own power, right? To say, like,
to the people. Do the John Lennon song, power to the people. I love it.
Yeah. And am still in the process of doing that. It's only been 3 years, so I still have moments where I belittle myself for others because I feel guilty if I don't, because I need you to shine. And, I'm like, okay, no, I'm shining. I am this powerful. This is what I do. This is what I am. This is who I am. And that all came from the same healing of releasing that initial guilt. That guilt is the foundation for what I was doing, and that motivation of guilt. Now my motivation is purely love and joy, and therefore I don't give myself away. I don't, I don't sacrifice myself on the altar of others. I do this when and where I want to do it. And I know how powerful it is for other people. And so I'm here for whoever can choose to take that and wants to receive it, and no one else. And I'm super happy for that. I used to be like, we need to reach everyone. It's my responsibility to help as many people as possible. And it's like,
that's tough.
That's
because
true.
When you're service to others people, it is really hard to try to do for yourself.
Yes.
I work long hours dealing with people because I'm a lifeline for some people. And I'm just like, okay. And I always find myself, when I meet people, who are really going through traumatic attachments, I'm like, just let me take the weight for a while. Just relax. Let me do it. But when I'm doing that for like 10, 15, 20 people, it gets to be a lot of.
It's too much.
Right? Yeah.
So I have this part of my practices I do every day involve a piece that really reinforces and creates this energy of I give endlessly to others after I've given endlessly to myself. I give to others in balance with receiving for myself, because I know the damage I did to my body and my mind and my soul by sacrificing myself year after year on the altar of this school system. This is not, sustainable. So everything transformed, right? Everything transformed when I was able to really see all of that. And I was able to see it because I left it all and more. There's other, aspects of what has transformed for me and what has healed for me. But that was a big one.
Right. Do you find that, did you find yourself going back to your Native American roots a little bit and having an understanding of?
Always. I've been doing that my whole life, again, by accident. Here's how accidental. I was in Ecuador on
of course you were.
Yes.
Were you in your van?
I should have been. We were on buses mostly, but it was a 3-week sort of tour. We were just backpacking around and seeing the country, and we were in, I think I was in Quito, but I can't remember exactly. But I was walking, and I was on a walking tour of the city, and I walked into this beautiful, you would have loved it, all the arches, all the ornate, it was definitely that type of architecture.
So I say everywhere I go, never leaving here.
It's so beautiful. And I was walking, I was marveling, it was one of those types that has the inner courtyard, and there's like levels and doors, and they had transformed it. It was a modern, there was like stores, little businesses and stuff in there now. And from the second level, some guy starts yelling, and I just think he's just yelling. And then I realize I'm like, me and my boyfriend were like the only people standing near, and he's yelling at us. And I'm like, oh, like, why is this man yelling at us? And luckily my boyfriend speaks Spanish better than me. And he's like, oh, he's talking to us. He wants us to come up there. And I was like, and what? Like, who, what? And he's like, yeah, he says that you need a healing from him. And I'm like, who is this guy? Like, he just yells at random tourists to like come up and get a healing. And but I looked up at him, and when I saw him, I was like, I just felt like, oh. And he was like, you have to come up here like now. And I was like, oh. And so I felt like the pull, of like, I actually think I need to go do this with this person, whoever this is. And I went up to him. He has no signs or flashy anything. Like, he's not like seemingly trying to attract tourists in or anything. And I know, I'm very aware that he could do this to like every person he sees. Like, you need a healing. I get that.
Yeah.
But when I sat down, he started telling me in Spanish, which my boyfriend was translating, things that no one could have or should have known.
Right.
All sorts of stuff. And, I had actually been feeling the weight of yet another attachment that I could not figure out like why or how to get rid of it. And he was like, we need to do this healing right now. Here's how much it's going to cost. It is going to cost you something. It's like the most affordable healing you could ever get. But anyways, I was like, sure, what do I've got to lose? Like, I feel very strongly this is actually a real shaman, a real healer. I feel strongly that I know him somehow, and he knows things about me that he shouldn't know. So I'm going to do it, right? And so I trust again in the universe, and I have this healing that is quite profound and not what I expected. And especially in this place, I felt like we were transported in time and space to like some deep jungle, and like it was very intense, but we're in like the equivalent of a strip mall in a very beautiful building that's very old. Super very unlikely. And so I have this huge healing, right? And we won't go into all the details of that, but afterwards I can tell that was real. This thing is lifted now. I'm actually much clearer and brighter and transformed, and I'm receiving all this. He's teaching me things, and he's like, you are going to do this too. You're going to do it in this way. It's going to be different. And I'm like, I don't think so, because at that time I was not knowingly healing anyone. I was doing tarot readings sometimes, and that was it. And I definitely didn't see myself in that capacity. And he's telling me that. I'm like, I don't know, maybe we'll see, right? Like, I'm still skeptical, even though all that just happened. And then he says, what are you going to do next? And I tell him, my boyfriend translates. I say, we're going to go to the equator, and we're going to go see this place where the native people, which he knows better than I, he is a native person there. The native people had created this, we'll say shrine or sacred space on the equator. When the Spaniards came, they said, that's not the equator, and they made it like 2 miles north. And then in 1970 or whatever, hundreds of years later, when we get the technology, they go, oh, actually it was back there where you guys had it. So the natives knew better than the Spaniards do, and they're supposed to be dumb and whatever. Obviously they're not. So we were going to go see that. We were going to see the real equator where no one goes. They go to the Hollywood version up on where the Spaniards put it in the wrong place. We were going to go to the real one, right? That was our plan. Then I was like, oh, we're going to go do this. And he starts laughing so hard. I'm like, that wasn't funny. Like, what? And he says, you still think you get to decide. And he laughs again.
That's
really
cute.
hard.
Yeah. You think that. Yeah.
Like, what does he mean?
Like, I'm in control. I'm a strong woman.
That's what I thought. And the next day we get on the bus, we go up. We don't get to the equator. We get to the Hollywood version instead. We're trying to tell the cab drivers, can you please take us to the real one? We know it's over there. We can see it, actually. It's across this valley, that one over there. It's like they don't want white people to go there, which I kind of understand. But we're like, why? Just take us there. Here's some, like, we want to go. We get it. We think it's so sacred and beautiful. We want to honor it. And they're just like, no one would take us. No buses would come. We're stuck in this place. It's horrible. It's dirty, whatever. We finally realize, like, we have to get back on the bus to get back, or we're not going to get back at all. So we didn't even get to see the equator that we came practically to Ecuador to see. We have to go back. We get on this bus. It's the wrong bus. We go the wrong way. We do get back to the city eventually, but it's starting to get dark. There's not in the same place we were in. It's hard to tell where we are. I'm starting to get freaked out. I'm like, I feel like we're lost, I'm like, let's just get off. I see like something. I think that tower over there is the one we went to the other day. And then that means our hotel is going to be over there. And I think we got it figured out. Let's just get off the bus. We get off the bus. We're like going, I'm trying to basically beat the sun. I don't want to be in the city when sun goes down. I don't really know what it's like or which part I'm in or how savory or unsavory it might be. So like, I just want to get back to our hostel so we can trust, and we get back. We're running, or not running yet, actually, but we run into this massive, huge demonstration. I actually see these rainbow flags coming up over this hill on this 12-lane freeway, helicopters, and I'm like, what did we suddenly like run into? And then I remember this dream I had 2 years before we ever even decided to go to Ecuador, of being on a bus, super stressed out, suddenly getting off the bus, seeing a bunch of crowd of people with rainbow flags. And then I run down the street, I turn left, and then I turn right, and then I find a little tiny church with a little pond in front of it. And so when I remember that dream upon seeing these helicopters and these rainbow flags, I'm like, oh my God, follow me. And I start running because I know this church is going to be there. And I run, and I turn left, and I turn right, and then I turn again, and there's this church with a little tiny pond that I had seen in a dream 2 years before. And I just sat down and started crying. My boyfriend's like,
one of your visions, or is this something you saw through astral travel maybe?
Right.
Or...
Yes. And then his voice came back to me. Oh, you still think you get to decide. Right?
That's
the
funny.
universe is going to show you.
That's funny.
Exactly what you get to decide, which is nothing.
Thank you for all the messages, Derek. I've been putting them up there. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm going to do a quick station ID, and then we're going to continue on. I have to do like this is the technical part of the job. So, guys, we are nearing, the bottom of the hour for the show. We are privileged to have Lindsey here with us, Lindsey Scharmyn, and we're having a wonderful chat. If you guys are just tuning in, get into chat and looking forward to your constructive comments. And I say that because there's certain ones chiming in off YouTube. So anyway, we are fully sponsored by the amazing folks over at Folgers Coffee. So big thank you to Folgers. We love you. You guys have been with us from day one, and we look forward to a long-lasting relationship with you. Also, big thank you to Dr. Snick, aka the Sonic Surgeon, who is an award-winning composer of Halloween, horror, sci-fi, and dark wave electronic music, whose music can be found anywhere where you can find good music, of course. So thank you for that, Justin. And just know we are on 8 different platforms streaming right now as we speak. And Derek White Sky Clouds and giving us readings. Yeah, love it. And there's so many people in there. Zach Man just coming in late. I know, it's happy 420. Somebody's been active. And nice to see you in there, Shannon, Dolly, of course, Derek. A lot of people chiming in all over the place. So thank you for coming in. So tonight we're talking about all kinds of things. We're talking about visions and astral projection and life paths, I guess, attachments and all sort of things. We haven't touched on dreamwalking. What exactly is dreamwalking?
This is another one of my words that I just get from my Native American and shamanic sort of training and learning, and that's that I would say it's not very different from what people think of as astral travel or out of body. The main difference is that this can happen in less lucid ways than some people might expect. When you have true out of body, it's lucid. Like it's real life, right? Like there's no difference. There's a lot of differences, but you know what I mean. Like this is how it feels to you. There's no difference really. It's more real even than this, right? Whereas dreamwalking can be a little fuzzier, but you have still your consciousness there. You're still aware that you're dreaming, and there's so much you can do in that realm when you understand. And I have been taught by guides in that space as well as out of that space, as well as human teachers, that there's a whole map and network actually. When you're in a certain place and you recognize it, you understand like, okay, well, if I shoot up through the ceiling here, I'm actually in this totally other part of the map or whatever. And so that is dreamwalking to me, is the ability to go in and consciously move about that space with intention, often to interact with other people who are also dreamwalking, sometimes without their own knowledge consciously, sometimes to perform healings for yourself or with others, and sometimes to gain information or to pull off other certain maneuvers, for me, always of the light and goodness. I don't, what should I say? I'm more oriented now towards that as I am with my healing, where I'm like, you guys tell me. I'm not going to try to do anything anymore. Like you tell me, you show me where you want me to go. I'll follow you. I'll do what I can there, and that's it. I'm not messing with that anymore, because like here, there's a lot that can go astray if you
I imagine you have rules to go by. I want to address one comment that's coming out of YouTube about how people believe in science fiction and strange spiritual beliefs, but when it comes to God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, then it's I refuse to believe. Actually, I've studied many religions, and if you get into the Old Testament especially, you will find that there are a lot of extraterrestrial experiences, such as the book of Enoch and Ezekiel and Jesus himself. You look into some of the old texts and some of the old ancient paintings throughout the last 1,000 years, and you're going to see things there that might just blow your mind. So it's okay. Well, whatever. Go find it yourself. And it's okay. No, he's not the only one that had it. Go and look up Ezekiel. Go look up Jesus.
Yeah.
There we go. There's one too. Also had it. So it's all in writing. Don't have to take our word for it. And I'm not going to get into a bit of a contest here with you. And that's the last I'm going to say on it. So
I've been there. I was saved from fundamentalism by some really good people and beings.
done.
Yeah. But I feel like I feel like that is God. I do love God. I love Jesus too. I love Michael the Archangel. I love Mary. I've had personal experiences with all of them. I love the Bible. The Bible's a rich tome of beautiful knowledge and also some terrifying things.
Right.
There's all kinds that we can get from that. And like
There's
you said,
a lot of experiences in that people aren't aware of.
Right. And I love that you brought up the paintings. Like
the paintings.
UFO?
Come on, Leonardo da Vinci. People have things to say about that.
Right.
But but there's tons where you'll see pictures, like the crucifixions, and you see crafts up in the air, and there's all kinds of stuff. Yeah. I can't argue with everybody about it. I wish I had the time, but it's up to people to go in and educate themselves on that. We've actually done shows like that on the Gray Zone. So Gray Zone Uncensored, guys, look it up. There's a lot of that in there. None of it is disrespect. It's all information that is out there. But getting back to to our conversation, I do truly believe that there's so much more out there to be learned, and you do have certain boundaries. They figure, could you just get out there in the ether? You can just go out and do all kinds of stuff, wreak havoc, and I'm free. I can go here, I can go here. But there is still there's laws that you have to abide by in all of that also, right?
Yeah. And of all the kind of dimensions I've touched or walked through or been a part of, I learned the same lesson, that there's consequences, there's karma, and there's real to yourself and others,
right.
And there's responsibility and duty there. And I even have taken it to this level that probably seems silly to some people, where when I'm playing a video game, which yes, I play video games, I love them, I act as though I was living that life, that this was my real life. I'm not going to do something immoral or wrong, and I know how silly that sounds to people, but I've taken it so seriously that no matter what I am doing, I'm going to do it of this utmost, integrity, that I'm not even going to do that in a video game. And the one time I didn't, I feel still badly about it. I still feel like I'm really trying to release
learning, that. Right? I mean, it's learning curves. You still have your
that humanity,
right?
Right. Yeah, definitely not perfect.
There's that whole free will thing too, though.
Yes.
He's got a little bit of space in there.
There's some space in there.
Yeah.
There's some wiggle room in there. It's like that shaman said, you still think you get to decide? And there's so many times now where I'm like,
yes,
did I even decide to leave my house and my job, or was I kind of forced into it? I did choose it, right? But I mean, there's a lot of that was very heavy-handed. You have to go. Okay, I get it.
Yeah, well, wiping out all your stuff and buying the van, just do this, and that's the way it is. But there is that free will thing. So to say, you think you have a choice? I don't know. I always thought we had a choice.
This is how I've come to understand it, is we definitely have a choice. We definitely have free will. But a lot of this we arranged before our conscious physical lived experience in this linear time arrived. So I did choose all that. I just chose it from a different place, and I didn't necessarily tell myself about all of it, because I wouldn't have then experienced it, taken in the messages in the same way, gained the same sort of empowerment or, learning or whatever else. Right. as doing it in this other way. So I've just learned to trust, like I said, I've learned to trust them, the guides or whatever, but really I've learned to trust my own, what people call your higher self, your oversoul, or whatever you want to call it. I've learned to trust that.
Right.
Never let me astray.
No. Well, you have to have faith in that and not second guess it.
Yeah.
But what do you do when you're, let's say, let's talk about channeling, automatic writing, things like that, because as a medium, this is stuff that you explore. Isn't that not a form of possession?
Yes.
That's what a lot of people think.
This is why I've never... So when I do channeling, what I call channeling now, which I used to hate that term so much, and I have a lot of derision towards it, and now I am doing what I call it that. It's at least a form of it. I don't let anything come into me.
Right.
I am like hearing it. I am allowing the visions and the words to like come into my mind, and then I ask after, did I get that right? Do I have to go back and change anything? Okay, I keep going.
Right.
And really profound things have come through, but this is my own boundary, and I'll admit fear for now, because I do not see the difference. I don't understand how to trust it yet, because I've had such near brushes with what I'll call possession, and I've seen other people possess, and I am not going there.
Right.
So I have backed off. But when Derek said that in the chat, I've had many other psychics, intuitives, and people tell me that recently, that I have this mediumship skill that's calling me, and that I need to step into it. And so we'll see if I get all
right
of that.
Here.
Yeah.
Message to Lindsey: time to awaken your mediumship services. Michelle's going to be even busier in the paraconscious journey in Peru.
Ooh.
Funny with that, because that is, I do have Peruvian lineage.
Ooh, you're going to do a trip in Peru soon, or is that what he's saying?
No, I wasn't planning on it.
Oh, well, maybe you are. Maybe you don't get a choice.
No, exactly.
Interesting.
So, I know. So, but that's interesting to me. Maybe I am. It definitely wasn't something I was planning on. But I've had people say, "Oh, you're going to go on this trip," and I'm just like, "I'm not traveling anywhere right now, people."
Yeah, this is a weird time to
I'm
choose
just put. Yeah, it's just. Oh my gosh, I've got so much travel on hold. I put all my filming. Everything's been on hold for a while now. So,
Yeah.
but there, Adriana, I'll plan on it. Good. You can go and let me know how it goes. Hey, Tamara. So no, I mean, I agree with that too. There are some people who are really gifted channelers, and maybe they've never had attachments, so they're not, they're comfortable in doing that. Some people aren't even aware that they do it.
Right. I actually didn't know how much I was channeling and for how long I had been doing it, but it was always through writing for me, because I'm a writer. I was, that's what I taught in school, was English and social studies too, but I've always been a writer. And I even looked back, this was a newer discovery. I looked back at some of these journals I've had since I was like 12, and they're like, I'm in love with so-and-so, and why did she say that about me? And, that stuff's in there. But I found these like messages, clear messages that I channeled through to myself without even realizing it, where I'd be doing all of that stuff, and then suddenly I'd be like, but it does seem like perhaps I could, it did something like profound would come out. And I'm like, wow.
Right.
I was doing it even then. It was just trying to come through, and I was barely probably listening to it. But now I can do this much more intentionally, where I can sit down and I can, go in and meditate and get deep and connect and make that channel bright and clear and protected. And then, this comes through. And I actually recently produced this book, The Key of Transformational Healing.
Wow, tell us about that.
It's very short, which is one thing that I like about it.
I love it.
Because, it's hard for us to read these days. I don't know about you guys, but it's hard for me to get reading time in a lot of the time. So I really appreciate that they gave this very short, sweet, concise little tome. But the way this came about is also hilarious. So I had finally accepted that I do channel, and that I have another channeled book. It's not right here in front of me, but it's called All Endings Are Beginnings. And it's a really great for Oracle. You can, not have to learn tarot or any of this stuff. Ask a question, open it, it answers your question. It's amazing, actually. So it's a really beautiful book. But so I'd finally had to admit that I'm channeling in that book and around that time. And then this came about. So I was driving again, and my phone has this notification pop up, like a reminder from my calendar, and I use this for everything. It's like, go buy protein and like take a nap, like everything I have to put in my calendar. I won't do it. So a notification, that's not weird in itself, but the notification said, consider writing The Key of Transformational Healing. And I was like, oh, okay. I mean, what? Where did this come from? I did not put this in my phone.
Right.
Yeah, I didn't remind myself of this. Like, no one else has access to my calendar, but a lot of times they come through in electronics, for me at least, because I think sometimes I don't listen, and they're like, hey. So
we really are kindred spirits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you understand. And
I
I was
do.
like,
I do.
oh, this is from them. They're telling me to do this. And I was like, well, I don't know what that is. I mean, I know what I think transformational healing might mean, but like, I'm going to write a book about it. That's kind of great. I'm not a therapist, you know? So but I trust. So I sit down and I, you know, unlike many people's ideas of how it should be, I type it out. I don't handwrite it. And so I'm sitting at my computer. I title the document, The Key of Transformational Healing. And I go in and then I ask them, what is this supposed to be about? What am I supposed to write?
Right.
Word for word just starts coming through. I just start typing. I'm typing. I get done. They're like, you're done. I'd be done. I'm like, oh, there's like a whole section. And then I go back and read it because when I'm in it, I'm not really like understanding very well. And I go back and read it and I'm like, wow, that's really cool. Like, what is this?
So you feel that you were channeling or just had like a total connection? Somebody else was in your brain while you were typing.
See, I call that channeling, but yeah, I think that they were putting into my mind word for word what I'm supposed to write,
what you were doing.
And what should be in this. And so again, like I said, I'd go back and I'd read it and I'd be like, is this, you know, and sometimes there was like, no, that was actually you put that part in, take that out. Like, here's the actual thing you were supposed to say. Like, oh, okay. So
none of my words or thoughts. Okay, I get it. I see how it works.
So I say, people say like, oh, you wrote this really great book. I'm like, I did not write that book. I typed that book out. Like, this is,
I was just a stenographer.
I'm taking dictation actually. So I say on the back, I'm blessed to have channeled this message for you. And you can, you know, find it here. I don't feel like I wrote any of this. And I, you know, a lot of it blew my own mind when I'm reading it. And there's a lot of it that I've understood in some way before, or I've had brushes with, or like, it's not like it's all completely new to me, but some of it is completely new to me. And then I've definitely never seen it all put together in this way in this time. And, you know, and then people ask me, well, who was it then? Like, who were you channeling? And they call themselves my spiritual ancestors, our spiritual ancestors. And I understood it's those same wogies that I have been communicating with my whole life, who can flash up in the sky and do all of these crazy things. That's them. They're my spiritual ancestors. And that's who came through in this book. And so I know them well, I trust them deeply, and we have this longstanding connection. And I think that's why I was able to bring this through. Like I said, it's very short. So
it is. I'm sure it's going to have like quite the punch.
So, it's quite the punch. Some people have read it and they're like, wow, it's very in your face. I'm like, I don't feel that way, but I understand, I guess, if you're not as steeped in or immersed in all of this as you and I probably are, it might be like very confronting, some of it, but it doesn't come across that way to me.
Like that. They have a message to deliver, and it's
this is what it
not
is.
Really, they're not going to sugarcoat it. They're not going to try to draw you in. They're just going to tell it like it is, and basically take it or leave it.
Exactly.
Right?
Yep.
So
some people are surprised with how stern and commanding some of these guys are.
Especially when you're not listening. You're not listening. I listen, I just don't hear well.
Yeah,
I always say, sure, exactly. Nothing I'm not trying. Tamara says, watch heart health, as a lot of physical mediums that channel end up with heart problems if they don't take care of their health. That's interesting.
This is something I've learned, is there's very specific spiritual practices that I have to do to build various spiritual energies in my body before I do any spiritual work, because if I otherwise run out of that sort of spiritual fuel, I'll call it, then I will start feeding off of my own body, and that's when you start developing like liver, kidney, heart, lungs.
There you go. Yeah, there you go. See, people don't think about that. This is another reason why not do readings.
This is another reason why not everyone should, right? And this is what
I agree with you.
This is what I tell people too. Like, when I say I don't do anything, people are like, well, then what good are you? I'm like, oh no, I mean, I prepare, I keep this vessel open. I like all this stuff I do in order to be able to do that level of work. It's very different. It's different from what people think that you're supposed to do. I think
so.
I think so too. Take peyote and tell people a bunch of stuff, which you can also do. Like,
that's true.
But that's not what I do.
Could be an interesting reading. It's not that, for myself, it's not like if I don't, I'll sometimes have spirits just really nag at me. And I don't mean that in a disrespectful way. I mean, they're very persistent. Because if I'm speaking with someone, for example, and they're like, I'm just like, what? And I always ask permission. I said, like, there's this individual named so-and-so, like, would you like the message? Because I don't want to intrude. Not everybody's, just some people like, oh, no, other people, but just like, oh my gosh. And I don't even do that on average, unless they are just like harassing me to the point where they'll keep me awake all night if I don't do it. I mean, if I'm going to buy and sell one day, I'm like, come on. Seriously, I'm trying to buy a chair. So that's all I'm trying to do here. So, so it's not like you don't do it. It's just like, oh my God, it can be a bit much. Tedious. Yeah, it can.
They can be very annoying.
They're persistent, some of them. I'll give them that. Tamara says it takes up your whole life to be a medium, especially a physical medium and channel. Yes, I would completely agree with you. The channeling thing, it's just, again, I think you really have to be seasoned to do it. But again, you look at people who don't realize they're doing it, and they just seem to breeze right through it. Like they just seem to have this natural way of blocking out negativity. While others, they don't even have to be channeling, and you have to maybe ask yourself, where is this message coming from exactly? And are you channeling? Or, because I've done things and I zone out and I come back and I'm just like, I don't remember that, but it's a good thing we recorded that session. Even just talking like with people who I'm assisting with attachments, I'll record it, and sometimes I'll just start talking and I don't even know where it's all coming from. Yes. But at the end of it all, I'm like, what?
Yeah. I'm like,
that was not me.
So, I kind of remember what just happened, but I'm not super clear on it.
Did we record that by chance? Good, because I don't think I could recreate that if I tried. Right. So no, I could totally get an understanding for that. I would not want to be a physical medium. If I am, I have absolutely no idea that I'm doing it because I'm just tired all the time anyway.
Yeah, it's just already draining.
No, exactly. There we go. So now let's talk a little bit about like I say ET. Yeah. Do you find now, because you still have these experiences you've had your whole life, do you find now that aside from my lab, like the military stuff, where do you see it going with them? Because there's this whole thing right now about, we're being prepped for, alien disclosure. Meanwhile, everybody's got one of these, has got better stuff than what the military is disclosing. Like that's all you're giving us? Is that Tic Tac, really?
Yeah, like, so, you've been saying it for a long time, actually.
I know. Meanwhile, people got beautiful stuff, What are your thoughts on that? Because the world is a bit of a crazy place right now. Do you think that, they're going to intervene in a little bit, at least with their contactees? Do you think it's going somewhere? Just like got to get in a van and drive across the continent.
I don't trust the government, period. They have a very good track record of killing and lying. So I question everything they do and the motivations for it. Seems like a lot of what happens is for them to gain even more control. Don't trust that either. So why are they releasing this? What, like you said, why so little? There's very clearly better evidence than this out there.
Everybody whistleblows, including like ex-military astronauts, are saying, "No, what? Are you kidding?
Right?
This is real."
So why this? Why now? And then I also have that question, if this military abductions often are reported as having these very specific types of extraterrestrials that go along for the ride, whether that is actually true or some sort of a screen or some sort of a human in a suit or something, who knows, but those aliens then would not be trustworthy either. So if the government is attached to some disclosure and some race that comes forward, I don't think that's the race that I would trust. I'm just assuming, right? It could be different. Who knows? I'll find out when we get there. But that's my sort of general take on that, is there would be a reason. It would be manipulative. It would be for further control and possibly in alignment with entities that I don't trust. The ones that I work with intentionally and am connected with still, like I said, they're not physical as far as I can tell. Their goal here to interact with us is to help us choose for ourselves and create for ourselves this very specific higher sort of future. And the reason you could you can see this as if you were a parent to a child, right? If you give them everything and you make it for them, they don't know how to do it for themselves. You're enabling them to fail, right? They're not very empowered to create for themselves. So if you loved us deeply and you wanted us to truly create a thriving society and world, or even just our own individual spiritual paths, you would not do it for us. You would invite us over and over again to the way or the path or the light or whatever you want to call something better.
Right.
So that's what I see them as doing. And any of them that are doing anything other than that, handing us technology that we're not ready for or anything like that, I'd say you don't have our best interests at mind. You have the control and subjugation of us most likely at mind.
Right.
And I'm not.
That's a good perception. That is, because I just see more and more people having experiences right now. And people are, I see people having an awakening. I don't know if it's because of everything that's being put into the collective. I think people are just really fed up, and now they're looking for something lighter because it's been a pretty dark couple of years, speaking of darkness, right? So I think that people are leaning to their religions. They are leaning to just answers, possibilities, take me away from it for a little while, whatever the case may be. I just know I'm working with more people, or communicating anyway with more people lately, who message and are having, experiences with these interdimensional or dimensional beings.
Yes, so many more.
Yeah.
And this, I think, is a testament really to our collective consciousness actually rising. Like you said, so many people are waking up, which makes the whole rise up a little bit more too. And so I have so much hope for that, and so much excitement about that. And I see the exact same thing. And I see sort of an equal opposite too, where not as many, but maybe I don't know, but people are falling too, right? They're falling into like the worst of themselves, and they're choosing the lowest vibration and path. And there's going to be some of that too. This is how it goes, right? This is how growth goes. This is how upliftment goes, is the darkness comes out. So just, we were talking about shadow work earlier, individually. Well, this is some high level collective shadow work we're doing now. We've got a lot to account for and look in the mirror about. And so some people are going to reflect those lower aspects too, but that's part of the process too. And I think that that'll end up being to our service.
Yes, here's to hoping. Zach Man. Hey, Zach. I have a question for Lindsey. In regards to the entities she interacts with, how would she describe their appearance? And have they disclosed to her where they originate from? Ooh,
I love that.
We like questions.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, in the key of transformational healing, they finally actually revealed to me where they come from, and they call it oh gosh, I'm going to forget now. The Grand Cosmic Center, I think it's that ball of light at the center that I saw.
Right.
And I think that's why they showed it to me. They're like, that's where we come from. Here's where you come from. They're very far away. And so whatever you want to call that, the center of that figure eight of the universe. And as far as what they look like, they look like literally anything they want. They have no shape and no form. They can present themselves as anything. I've seen them present themselves as so many things in the light and the dark, as a light and as a physical object. I've seen them change from one physical shape to another physical shape in front of me. So as far as I know, they either have no actual form, or they can just choose what it is, and their form is just light. It is a light ball.
It's interesting, and because if you're looking at somebody from faith, hence who we were talking with a bit earlier, they could say, someone could say, well, it sounds like they're shapeshifters. How do we know they're not this if they're in light and they're in dark and they're... So again, you have to rely on your own
discernment.
Yes.
This has been years for me and decades for me. And if any of them had ever lied, even a smidgen, I wouldn't be working with them. If they had even hurt me a smidgen, I wouldn't be working with them. If they had tricked me, if they had led me into some darkness, if they had anything, wouldn't be working with them. But they have consistently and constantly been nothing but love and wisdom and truth. So I trust them, just like you would a human, right? I tell people this because they say that. How do you know? How do you know who to trust and who not to? And I say, well, how do you know which humans to trust and who not to? And if you're not good at that yet, don't go to the spiritual realm and think that you're going to do well, because you're not. But that was part of my early training, right? In physical reality is like, here's all the types of scum. Here's all their tricks. Like literally everything from the lightest shade of it to the worst psychopathy. And you're going to intimately know each of them. So now you know, right? And in addition to that, I have the great luck of being able to see auras. So that makes it a lot easier. You're like, oh, gross. Yeah.
I like that
helps. So I've also been able to compare when you act like this and do this, and I can see what your aura is doing. So I know now like some of the energy to feel for too, right? And so I can feel it. It's no different on the spiritual realm for me. I can see your aura. I can see your thought forms. I can see what you're doing, and I can see how I can feel how it makes me feel. And if those things don't all align completely with love and truth, that even a tiny bit, I am not talking to you.
No, I think that's great, but you also trust in what you're seeing. You know, some people I think second guess that too much, and I think that's one of the big questions when it comes to astral projection. You know, they're afraid to let go because they're afraid of what's going to be in those lower realms, and how you can get yourself, you know, how can you get yourself safely through those realms and into other realms. Sounds like the beings that Edgar Casey described in the first beings that came to Earth.
Really? I love Edgar Casey. I
love Edgar Casey as well. Yes, absolutely. I love his stuff.
How cool.
But it goes to show where the messages come from. But yes,
well, this is one of the things I've noticed again and again from my own experience too, is like I said, I didn't really go looking for any of it. I did go looking, like I was interested in magic and ghosts and stuff when I was young, you know, so I'm not going to say that I like never had any interest or went looking, but I didn't go looking, for example, for any of those shamanic experiences that I had. I didn't go looking to have demonic attachments or otherwise, right? I didn't go looking for any of that. And the things that I've gained from it and learned, have much of it has been through my own experience. So then I go sharing it with people and they're like, oh, you must have read so-and-so. And I'm like, I've honestly actually never even heard of that person. So I'm very sorry. But I like that because it's that confirmation that, oh, okay, other people have come to this same thing through their own methods. And that makes me feel better.
Well, yeah, I mean, that it validates that other people have been having these experiences even throughout time. I mean, Edgar Casey hasn't been around for a really long time, and he was brilliant.
Yeah.
You know, and there are so many of them out there, and you don't even hear about some of these like really gifted people.
I'm still learning so much about Edgar Casey. I lodged on him pretty, a long time ago. I was like, wow, what a cool, like, how do people not realize what's going on in this realm if we have people like Edgar Casey? But I just learned from him because I was just at a sort of spiritual fair, and really gifted reader I ran into does Edgar Casey style readings, and he was explaining how he does them. And he said, I first started by working with a hypnotherapist, and I was like, oh, that's so fascinating. Of course, that would be like such a good tool, right? I've never considered that. That would be great. And he said, yeah, well, many people don't realize that that's how Edgar Casey started too. And I was like, oh, like I did not know that. I thought he just was struck with the
sleeping prophet wasn't really sleeping. He was under hypnosis. No,
right?
Well, so I guess to learn how to put himself into that sleep state. And it makes sense. I mean, when your subconscious mind is open, like you must be supercharged, right? Compared to just sitting here, like right now we're talking. Yeah, you can pick up some things for sure.
Right.
But I mean, even for me, when I sleep, you get visions, you get like all of these downloads, and right, like there's another one, Manly P. Hall.
Oh yes, yeah, he's got all the all the knowledge.
He does. He's again brilliant. Thank you, Doreen.
Thank you.
Yeah, Manly P. Hall. Geez, there's great minds in the field. I think that were just way ahead of their time, and here we are experiencing so much of it, having a better understanding of it. But yet there are people who still don't really get it and don't really do much with it.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's people who are even will call themselves healers and teachers and guides and whatnot, and then they're still very closed-minded, shallow, hooked on a very specific, like, this is how it's done. And I'm always like, I do it however it works for me. Like, it's cool. I'll take all the tools and I'll see which ones work. Well, I'm going to do it whatever I want. And so there's a lot of rigidity and a lot of closed-mindedness, a lot of ego, and a lot of things that go on. And so that's why it's so refreshing to go all the way back when we were talking about, I've loved the teachers most who were just like, yeah, I'm a real person, and here's how you be a real person and also, dive into these realms and these skills and these abilities. Yeah. And
I agree. I agree. Sometimes it comes to you and you just go with the flow, and that's what works the best. It's nothing pre-planned.
No.
Sherry, also very gifted, just saying. How do some people have attachments without knowing and others do not? In other words, what actually causes that attachment?
I go back to that same description that I was saying earlier. If your terrain is open for infestation, you're gonna get them. They're there. They're everywhere, right? And they want to.
True.
They want to, and I don't even think a lot of them are necessarily like evil. It's just like that's their job. Their job is to eat this excess energy, or their job is to like nestle in and
maybe it's just self-preservation. It's there,
or
it's how they survive.
Or even like, there's a purpose to go back to the maggot analogy. There's a purpose for maggots. If we didn't have maggots, we'd have a ton of just dead flesh everywhere. It would never degrade. Like it serves a purpose. So
it's a good analogy. It's nasty, but it's a good analogy.
Yeah, it's also it's effective because you don't want those maggots in you spiritually.
Right.
So you keep your house clean, so you don't get cockroaches. You keep your this is why they all serve a purpose. And I don't know that I'll go so far to say that every single type of those negative entities does serve a purpose, although I would imagine it might be true. And this is how nature works, right? Every single thing, if there's an excess of it, well, here's this thing that's going to clean it up. If there's an imbalance over here, well, here's the thing that's going to push you back to balance. And so I think people first most of us have not the cleanest terrain. And so we have these doorways, baggage. I usually call them. Yep, baggage. We have these doorways we've left open or whatever. We have this sludge seeping out of us and something's going to come feed off of it. And then there's, like I said, the invitation you didn't know you made, right? In my case,
would this apply to readers? Let's say if not being aware, opening doors, because you're reading somebody else is coming to you with their baggage and maybe they've got open doors. Maybe you're doing everything right, but maybe it's everybody's coming to you that's opening doors in without realizing.
Or you're allowing their energy to stick to you and their energy was already carrying a parasite or a passenger and now it's yours. So there's all of this house cleaning that you do, or that I do at least, to be a responsible spiritual or energy worker, where I work to clear myself and cleanse myself and my space and all of my energy before and after I interact with anyone on that level. I'm very intentional when I'm doing it, that I was taught this by, again, one of my shamanic teachers, that I'm not doing anything, which also means I'm not even touching your energy really. Like I'm a hollow bone. Stuff flows through me, that's cool. It's not mine. It's not even in me. I've stepped aside. And that all of that helps too. And even then there can be some stuff that, because they're sneaky, like we talked about, they're crafty.
Yes.
So sometimes you have to do a little bit more cleanup. But if you keep your house clean, you don't make any invitations, you understand what an invitation can look
like.
People,
high vibes. You want positive vibrations.
And you don't want to say things like, I won't say any of them, but you don't want to, you don't want to even jokingly say some things, and you don't, even when you're working with humans, you don't want to make agreements with them, vows, commitments, those types of things, because you don't know for sure, like, what that's actually inviting, that they're, like I said, already attached to. That could maybe come through.
That's a good point.
That's a lot of intention.
A lot of people don't think about. That's true. You're making an arrangement with an individual. If there's an attachment there, you're kind of getting a 2-for-1.
Yes.
It's
right. When it's people like us who have these high level connections that are serving and want to heal and uplift, and it's not so good when it's the other way around.
It's true, and they're just the same. They're out there floating around also. Only positive vibes coming from my end, Zach, especially tonight.
Yes.
Well, we're nearing the end of the show, so this is the part where you promote yourself, tell people how to find you, where to get your books, what you got going on. Promote.
Thank you so much. Yes, it's been such a pleasure. It's so much fun to talk to you and connect to such a kindred spirit. I love it. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's been great.
Well, I have my site, which is rogueways.org, and it's rogue as which is ROGUE, not rouge, ROUG, but rogue, and then ways like pathways, not like the ocean waves or sound waves, but pathways. So rogueways. .org, and on that site you can see all kinds of things that I write and do. I have my link to my books if you want to buy them directly from me. I love to write a little channeled inscription for people and send that off to them. So if you like that, you can do that. You can also get them on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and other places. But that's also a place to get them, is straight from me. I do orgone. I make really powerful, beautiful, and unique orgone that you probably have seen nothing like before. And I try to do it as affordably as possible because my goal is to get these powerful tools into people's hands. And so if you're drawn to that, that's there. I do make some crystal and stone jewelry. I do medicine bags also. I have this beautiful leather worker, powerful woman who creates these amazing medicine bags, so I can send them with or without medicine for you to add to it if you would like me to use the medicines for you and you don't trust yourself to do that. That's cool. We can help you with that. And then you can add it yourself and, do whatever. And I do guidance sessions where I tap in with your guides and we channel through some messages, and it could be direct questioning or whatever you want or need. And then I also do tarot readings, I Ching readings. I do healing ceremonies for if you do feel like you have like a deeper level of healing that needs to take place or attachment that's going on or something like that. And so you can also access that. And then I do just like a talk session too. If you just want to talk about experiences you've had or things going on and get some coaching and sort of discussion about it, then I do those as well. So there's a lot of services I offer there on the site. Nice. And I want to invite everyone too, if you like to meditate, I do twice weekly guided meditations. So, wow. And they're usually 15 to 30 minutes. And you don't have to be there live. I send the recording out too. So if you can't make it to the time, you can always join in whenever you can. And then I do an event once every solstice or equinox. And so the next one will be this summer solstice, or it's as close to it as we can get while still being on a weekend day. And it's called One Day of Brightness. And it's a day of learning, of very deep spiritual connection, of clearing house, uplifting ourselves and heightening our energy and receiving messages, and also some learning, from good teachers who actually will share, methods and knowledge and wisdom with us. Very nice. And usually a little bit of body action and movement too. So it's a pretty well-rounded day. And we do that, like I said, every solstice and equinox. So everyone is invited to all of those events as well.
Very nice. Very nice. I'll make sure I'll post the web page on the group page on the Outer Realm guys. So they'll go in and they'll be able to find you there, just in case nobody's taking notes. So, but thank you so much for joining me tonight. It was just so delightful, so much fun. And I wish you all the best moving forward, because, oh my gosh, it just sounds like you've got so much interesting stuff going on. And I love your free spirit, and especially the whole boho thing. That's awesome. I love it. It's totally awesome. No, it's great. It's great. And gosh, feel free to reach out again. You're writing more books and you'd like to come back on, I'd love to do it.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure. Your audience is amazing, and much love to all of you.
Thank you. Thank you. So, take care of yourself and stay safe, as they say. It seems to be the big words nowadays. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, everyone, we have come to the end of another fantastic segment here on the Outer Realm. And I'm hoping that you guys will be tuning in tomorrow as we have another amazing guest. I think you guys are really going to dig this guy, Kevin Randall. So he's never been on the show before. He's got over 100 books. He's a retired lieutenant colonel of the United States Air Force, has a PhD in psychology. He's going to be discussing his new book, which essentially talks about many UFO events and sightings, especially around a town in Texas called Lavalette. So I think that's going to be pretty fantastic. I'm freaking knee deep into it already. And hopefully, Amelia won't be with us this week. I think she's still sick. So Boo, send her lots of love and light. Also, we're going to be bringing something new forward. As you know, we've been talking a little bit about the new Team Templar North America. A lot of big names, people who you've seen on our show, basically. Carl Cookson, Hamilton White, Wayne Murphy, Sean Williamson, myself, Bubbly. And there's a lot that's going to be coming up. And maybe just start keeping an eye right here on this network for some really exciting things. If you want to get a hold of us, please go to the Outer Realm Contact at gmail.com, the Outer Realm Contact at gmail.com. Do our best to get back to you. And sorry, you did miss it. Sorry, guys, you just have to catch the archive. We'll make sure that gets posted for you. But big thank you to our guest, Lindsey Scharmyn. Big thank you to Folgers Coffee for being completely awesome. Big thank you to Dr. Snick. And remember to come back. Check us out tomorrow for this new guest. You guys are going to love him. So behave till tomorrow, guys. Good night.